You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello again, everyone. You are listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm your host, Doug Thorpe. Today, we're going to talk about another step in the entrepreneurial journey, specifically the idea of really thinking about the market you want to serve. And that's a challenge that many entrepreneurs struggle to define and certainly deliver upon. So I've got a guest here who's going to help us really drill down into that. His name is Jason Roberts. Jason, welcome to the show.
Morning, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So, Jason, I kind of want to dive right in there. When we were in the green room, I was talking about the fact that I certainly have an observation, first being a former banker trying to support clients and later being a business advisor and helping entrepreneurs try to grow their businesses. There's a common theme out there that I run into frequently. A person gets an idea and they go decide they're ready to become an entrepreneur. They want to go launch a business, but they've not necessarily done a good job of really defining the target market. You know, who do they want to serve? What is their need? What solution do you provide that really has a value proposition that target may want? Tell me a little bit about your experience in that realm and any observations, same or different, you might have.
So we have a rule in every business that I personally own and operate, the ones that we consult for, and anytime we're doing marketing related to, when we're trying to figure out who our demographic is, who we're going to serve, one of the first questions that we ask is what's in it for them? That's kind of our motto of every message, everything that we need to do. I think sometimes as companies, as salespeople, as marketers, we get really caught up on telling our story of why our product is so great, how everything is so good, and we sometimes lose track of who's our target audience and what are their needs? What are their problems in the world that we can fix? What are they going through in life right now? Because if I'm just me with the message, even if the message is good, even if our product is better than our competitors' products, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we're not really lasering in on who's our ideal client. What do they look like? Where do they hang out? What do they do? What are their struggles? What are their needs? What do they value? What is something we can do to help make their life better? How can our product heal a pain or an issue in their life or make something better in their life that they're currently experiencing? Sometimes I've found it's better to sell the result than it is better than to sell the benefits, to sell what's going to become better in their life because of our product, or what need does it fix or serve?
I agree totally. And as you were describing that, I'm reminded of a popular book that came out a couple of years ago, Story Brand by Dan Miller. And he said just that, what you said is too often entrepreneurs want to be the hero of the story because they've got this great solution. But the reality is you're not the hero. You're the guide or the Sherpa that can help the hero, your customer, solve a problem, conquer climb a mountain or win the girl, whatever the personal challenges they're having. And if you lean into their story, not your story, you find a lot more opportunity to connect.
Absolutely.
And what do you think? Why do you think it's hard for an entrepreneur to begin thinking that way? Because again, they're proud of what they think they've created, and so they want to get the message out to the world. But as we've said here, that's not the way to get the best result.
I'll tell you what I think it is from my personal experience, from my mistakes, from my successes. I think if any of you guys have read the book, The E-Myth, it's a good parable of what we experience a lot in business. And the story is kind of the woman who is a baker at a bakery, and the bakery is really successful, and she leaves and goes and opens up her own thing. I worked with doctors, with lawyers, with medical spas, with CPA practices, with dental offices, no matter what it is. And every time I come in, they say, "No, Jason, you don't understand. We're in the medical field," or "No, Jason, you don't understand. We're in the dental field," or "No." And the mindset around it is is very much specific to the thing that they were good. Like most of us that are entrepreneurs that created our own business, we were really good at something in someone else's business, one part of that business, right? And we said, hey, we're really good at this. Why are we doing it for somebody else? We should do it for ourselves. And we exit out of that structure, out of that environment that has all these different skills. And we put ourselves on the assembly line in every single role. Whereas before we were really, really good at one role. And so I think that sometimes we forget that not everyone thinks the way we think. Not everyone's needs are our needs. Not everyone has the same struggles or same problems that we do specifically. And so I always try to pull myself out of myself and say, this isn't about what would benefit Jason. This isn't about what would help me. It's about where is my target client? And I might not even be my own target client, so I really have to, it's kind of like the book, The Love Languages, if you're a physical touch person, you're going to show love with physical touch. But if your spouse is something different, they're not feeling the love that you're constantly giving. And so I think the same thing really applies in business is, we have to attract our clients by what their needs are, not what ours are. And I think we just get stuck in that. Sometimes we forget to take ourselves out of ourselves and say, what can we do to serve? What can we do to make, to make their life better?
Right. Well, in trying to do a good job of defining that, I would argue has gotten actually more complicated than it needs to be, because I have run into clients who have tried their hand at going to Google or Facebook to tee up and run some ads, and you immediately get dumped into the whole idea of defining your audience, and you get into all these weird parameters and behaviors and values and ideas and demographics ultimately. And as technically true as some of that may be, if you're the entrepreneur and you start clicking all those buttons, you may be taking your effort way down a path that has really no result whatsoever. In fact, I'll just share, recently I was talking to somebody that is an expert in that space. And he said at his firm, when they are asked to do Facebook ads, they don't even do all that dialing in on the audience thing.
Really?
They do a very, very broad general, because guess what? The algorithms are so smart now, and with the ever encroaching presence of AI, those platforms, they'll read the content, they'll look at your image, they'll look at the text, and they'll decide what audience ought to get that message.
Gotcha.
And, that for me, when I heard that from him, number one, that was a refreshing idea. It's like, well, of course, that's where that technology makes the most sense, is go ahead and try to explain your value proposition to you still need to be thinking about the ideal target, but style your message to address their needs, their pain, their value. And then all those algorithms will figure out who to serve your ad up to.
Absolutely.
It's a real challenge that way. Well, when you go in with a new client, you touched on part of the equation. What else happens when you kind of engage and start your discussions with new clients?
Well, one of the first things I try to get crystal, and this is also kind of wild to me, is first thing I try to get crystal clear on. I'm really good at understanding where somebody's at, understanding where it is that they want to go, and building the system or process to get there. And I'm not saying, hey, look at me, but I've built $10 multi-million from scratch, from zero. And I've also had some that failed, and 07 came, and I was in the banking world too, and owned a mortgage company. We had close to 100 employees, and 07 came, and it was lights out. We lost $100,000 a month for 2.5 years until I was Chapter 7 bankrupt. I lost I was subscribed to this dream. If I work really, really hard right now, then someday I can have this great life. And so I was at the office at 5:30 in the morning and left at midnight. And, that someday never came. I mean, it was good. It was good until it wasn't, and so anyway, one of the first things I try to get really clear on is, where is it that you want to go? What is the vision for your business? And I know it sounds kind of hokey, but whether I'm meeting with somebody who's just starting out in business or I'm meeting with a company that's trying to go from 5 million to 10 million, oftentimes the vision of where they want to go is kind of unclear. And it's very difficult to build a map or a plan if we're unsure of where we want to go. So the first thing I try to do is help them get crystal clear on where it is that they want to go. Second thing I start really zeroing in on is, people call them KPIs, key performance indicators. I say metrics, whatever it is that you want to call it. But that to me is the lifeblood of any successful business. If you're tracking even base level metrics, I can, like a doctor, somebody can come in and within 5 or 10 minutes, I can figure out where the problem is in the business. I can figure out how to scale it. I can figure out how to grow it. I can figure out how to get the entrepreneur out of the way. If we're tracking those things, they always tell a story. And so many times I have entrepreneurs saying, this just isn't working anymore. Rarely is it that it isn't working anymore. It's that a part of the assembly line isn't performing in the capacity that it should be. And when we're able to identify what that is and correct it, it starts performing just as good, if not better.
Yeah. Well, you packed several things in there, I think, that are really valuable. One is starting with that end in mind. Stephen R. Covey made it famous in his 7 Habits book, begin with the end in mind. And that's that idea of, can you define where you want to go, whether it's 3 years or 5 years or 10 years? Right. And if you're sitting at 5 million, you say you want to get to 10, well, that's a kind of a goal, but that's not really a destination. I mean, it's like, okay, but what opportunity gives you that result? What market do you have to be in? Do you need to expand service-wise? Do you need to change your mix of offerings that you're doing? Or do you need to broaden your geography? Do you need to attract a different demographic into the business? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered in that definition of the end game that you're shooting for. And I agree wholeheartedly. If you don't have that objective, you're floundering. And just to say, I want to bank 10 million by year 5, well, good for you, but
it's a dangerous game. I mean, it's I first probably 7 or 8 years of business for me, I operated from a place of, as long as we're making more money than we're spending, we're in good shape. And to a degree, that's true, but it's also super reckless and not the way that you operate and grow and run a business. There's a whole lot more to it than that. And so I think that kind of plays into what you were just saying of, start with the end in mind and understand it's more than just a goal. It's understanding what you want your team to look like, what you want your operations to look like, what you want the experience for the customer to be like, and how is that going to change between 5 million and 10 million? What are the daily action items that need to change in order to create that type of result? So yeah, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded of the old joke among bankers. The customer walks in and says, "I can't be overdrawn. I still have checks." Well, and I actually had a customer that did that, walked in and said those very words, and I'm like, "Oh, I knew that was a joke. I didn't know it was real." But
yeah, right.
You're right. I mean, being able to just chase the cash, chase the money is not an objective. It's not a fulfilling prophecy. And the other thing that we've touched on a little bit is the moving parts in the business. I think maybe this is a good place to put the cautionary flag up for owners who are still trying to do it all themselves. That's inevitably an observation I see. Particularly, it's understandable in the startup mode. You're spinning all the plates, trying to get the thing off the ground, and maybe you've hired a couple of people. That's great, but still, you're kind of running everything. But a business cannot scale if you have to touch everything. Because you only have so many hours in the day, and that's a finite limit.
And you're only good at so many things, like we all have a unique genius zone, something that we're really, really brilliant at, but that's one small part of the business. I had a client from Tucson that owned a big CPA firm, and she sold that CPA firm for millions of dollars, and she wanted to invest in real estate, and she wanted me to help her help build out a business plan for her. And so she came to St. Louis. We spent a whole week together. She went back, she implemented it. The first week she called me and she's like, Jason, I couldn't be happier. I had 76 people call that wanted to sell their house, and she's ecstatic. She calls me a week later and she's irate, mad, and she says, this doesn't work. Not a single one of those people wanted to sell. And I recognized it right in the instant, but like, we have all these different departments inside of our business, and each department needs to have someone that's inherently good at that part that they're doing. And nothing against CPAs, but she spent 25, 30 years of her career kind of locked into a room by herself on spreadsheets and numbers. She didn't spend the last 30 years interacting with people and that kind of thing. And so we usually personality profile test our clients, like DISC or Myers-Briggs or Straight Finders or Colby or any of those. You guys, you know those things. I didn't do it with her because this was kind of a different deal, but she had zero sales ability. She was super low on the I, super low on the D. Like, she would be the last person that you would put in a sales role in your organization. But like you just said, we wear all these hats, we spin all these plates, and the client, the path that the client had to go through within her business went through her as the salesperson, and she was never going to convert that. And so her thought was that this business just doesn't work, or I need to give up, or I need to quit, or this model doesn't work. When in reality, we hired an acquisitions person that was good in that place, took her out of the way, put him there, and she's made millions of dollars since, just from that one tweak, just from moving that one thing. And I think that's so important for entrepreneurs to understand. It's always us. It's always the owner that is the bottleneck in the way of our own business growth. Whether you're doing 5 million a year or whether you haven't done your first 50 grand, we're always the bottleneck in our growth. And so I think, for me at least, understanding what I'm really good at and staying in my lane, and understanding the things that I'm just not good at and getting out of the way has, my first 10 years in business, I was a micromanager. I worked 80 hours a week. And we had a big business, but I constricted it. It would have been 100 times bigger if I trusted the people that were better than me in other areas. And I think we all have this mind, this kind of belief that I'm the only one that can do this, or if I let someone else do this, it's going to fall, or it's going to crash, or it's going to go away. And the reality is, there's some things that we're really, really good at, but if you look at the whole operation of what it takes to make a business successful, it's probably 10% of the overall. And if we're doing all those things, we're actually being more of a detriment than we are a service.
Yeah. I like that idea. And I think one of the challenges is the owner maybe can't get out of their own head sometimes. Yeah. And whether it's ego, which thankfully, truthfully, is not that big an occurrence. I mean, let's face it, to be a successful entrepreneur, everybody has to have a little bit of ego. They have to have a little bit of thick skin, a little bit of, water roll off your back kind of approach and mentality. But you can't let that get in the way of saying, I suck at bookkeeping, so I'm going to go hire a bookkeeper. I can't do that. I can't limit the business that way. And the lady you talked about that truly wasn't good at people facing, but, so hire somebody that does that.
That's right.
And, sometimes, particularly in the startup mode, that's easier said than done. You're looking at your numbers, you're going, there's no way I can afford 80 or 90,000 for this person, or maybe more. And yet, well, wouldn't, one or two sales cover that? And wouldn't you be off to the races if you had that done properly? So really, kind of allocating that load. And I like the key word you've also said a couple times, that notion of operating in your own genius zone. And I agree wholeheartedly. We all have some level of expertise that we bring to the table, and that's the thing you need to double down on. And everything else, you either need to automate, delegate, or totally eliminate.
100%.
And, that's the only way a business is going to run. I'm also, as we're talking here, I'm thinking about client I had that, and I don't want to give too much detail because I don't want to, embarrass them or make them feel bad because I'm not intending this, but it's a life lesson. This individual had a big responsibility in the business and really didn't, on the surface, it looked like they didn't want to delegate. They didn't want to release any control. But the longer I worked with them, I realized the real problem was they sucked at training and coaching people. They could not articulate what their secret sauce was about the process they had developed. And it truly wasn't that they didn't want to let it go. They didn't know how to explain it to somebody they hired. And sadly, and this is true confession on my part, it took me too long to figure that out, that was the real problem. There's an old wisdom that says the problem's not the problem. And I was really pounding the guy on being willing to delegate, and he just didn't seem like he wanted to. And I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally, what we figured out is he just hated training. He had a great secondhand employee that was hungry to learn and hungry to move on and hungry to take it on and seemingly fully capable of doing so. But this guy couldn't tell the story.
Yep. I've got the exact same thing going on with a client in Texas that owns a construction company right now. Greatest guy, does top-notch quality work. But he struggles a little bit in exactly what you said, articulating to his team or to his right-hand person or assistant or whatever you want to call it, what he needs done. And so we've gone through, since I've been working with him, 2 or 3 different assistants, and something just wasn't adding up. I'm doing the same thing that you're doing, kind of hammering on him that you've got to delegate, and we keep losing these people. So I got more involved in it this time. And exactly like what you just said, I saw it in real time of he's just a little more reserved, a little more quiet, and he's not articulating exactly what he wants. And so the employee's confused. They're doing what they think he wants, but it isn't, but they're not mind readers. It was just something that simple that being able to properly, and the girl that we didn't know if was going to, she's fantastic. She's doing a brilliant job. Sales are up, growth's up. They're moving fast now. And it was all just that one small thing that you just said, the communication of what needs to be done, what you want it to look like, and how to do it. Yeah.
So it is interesting. And again, I guess the message in all that is if you're the owner, founder, or partner in a business, it's really important to do that self-check, that self-analysis of if you're feeling the pain in the business, if things feel stuck or limited or capped out, look in the mirror. It might be you that's causing that bottleneck.
Probably is, yeah.
And get some help. I don't mean therapy wise, although maybe sometimes that is what you need. But get an outside set of eyes or ears listening to what your story is, and see if you can find help. Retooling that and moving on with it. Well, what other things have you seen and experienced in this part of the journey, Jason?
Kind of along those same lines, I think on the delegation piece, I worked with a vein doctor in St. Louis, and this is where the scaling growing part gets a little quirky. And it was another one. Every time I meet with somebody, the situation is the same, but it's you don't understand. My clients aren't going to trust anyone else but me. And I experience this in almost every business that I work with, where the entrepreneur is a provider of some sort. I worked with a hair salon and helped grow a hair salon. It's always the same thing. They're not going to trust anyone else but me. And I would just encourage everybody that's listening, really take a inventory of the belief system or belief structure that you've created around your business. All the belief is a story we've told ourselves a bunch of times. Doesn't mean that it's true or real. A belief is just something we've told ourselves over and over again, but we believe it to be real. And so, when that vein doctor is saying, you don't understand, Jason, I've had this business for 15 years. I'm the only one they're going to trust. He believed that, and he's going to operate from that place for the rest of eternity unless he has some sort of major shift. And so the shift that I work to instill in him is that while no doubt you're extremely skilled in what you do, if you're telling me that you want to grow your business, the only way to do there's only so many hours a day. If you're the only provider, I pretty much can guarantee there's someone that's 95% as good as you out there. There's another doctor that went to school that's also pretty good. If we can start to pull you out of that place and you're able to transfer the trust to your audience, if he can transfer the trust to the new provider, to his own audience. And so we created a way to do that over time where the new person was, the new provider was in the room with him and just kind of observed, got the client comfortable. The next time the client came in, that guy worked on him and the owner stood in the room and kind of oversaw it. And then the third time they were on their own. Complete transition. The guy's got 4 or 5 different providers in there now. He's working 20 hours a week, maybe at the most, and he was working 80 before, and it was something that he didn't believe was possible. And because he didn't believe it was possible, it never became possible. So just one of the big things is like, think about how is your belief structure, or how is the story that you've told yourself for a long time, could it possibly be impacting the result that you're trying to get? Maybe not, but what if it is? How can we shift it? How can we change it?
I like that. And the story there on that doc is particularly true with those sole provider type offerings. I've got a very good friend who was a veterinary doctor, and he had a thriving practice just for a one-man shop, basically, but he had never engaged other docs other than kind of on-call backup emergency type support. He had never really expanded the practice, and he did it for like 40 years, and then he said, well, I really need to retire. I'm going to try to sell this. Well, he was what was needed to be for sale.
Yeah.
He was the business, and he basically sold it for spare parts is the transition value he got out of it. Sad story, and thankfully he had done okay in personal wealth management and savings and investment, so he was fine. But the potential value he could have had for the business was zero, and that part had not happened well. And contrast that, the veterinarian that I've used for many years, he's got a whole different mindset about it. He got tired of working for another vet, went out and found a partner, and they launched a clinic. And gosh, I don't know, they got 6 or 8 docs on board there now, and they're packed. And, can I see him if I want to? Yes, I can, I can let my desire be known and he'll take my appointment, but generally I'll see one of the other docs.
Sure.
I mean, it's a dog or a cat, what do I really need,
Yeah.
But
that's the difference between having a job and having a business. I built everything in my first 10 years. I built businesses that I had to serve instead of it serving me. And I don't mean that in a capacity of like, I don't show up and I don't lead. I just mean it in a way of, if the business doesn't function without you being there, then it's really not a business. It's a job, and you're your own boss and you're your own worst boss. And I'm not making that bad either. I'm just thinking like, get clear on what it is that you want, because I enjoy, from somebody who sacrificed a lot of years of life, a lot of time with my family. I subscribe to this. If I work really hard right now, then someday I can have this great life thing. You can have a great life right now if you structure your business right now in the right way. You don't have to do it that way. I had a mentor sit down with me and he said, Jason, you're good at business. You build these companies, you have success. You're nobody special. He said, what would be really special is if you were able to grow your business, serve more people, help more people in 3 or 4 hours a day instead of 15 hours a day. Now that would be impressive. And that was the first time ever in my life I had thought that way. I equated being the first one there in the morning, last one to leave is the definition of success. And we make more money now. We run more businesses to scale now. Everything we do is magnified when I'm a little more out of the way, when I'm not trying to play all the roles, when I'm not trying to spin all the plates. And that was a lesson that took me a long time to learn.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. And and I'm hearing voices out there in the audience that are saying, "Yeah, but you don't know my business." I'm thinking of a person I met down in Florida. He owns a general construction company, commercial style, and he's grown it from about 10 million to about 40 million. And he late last year, he took a whole month off and took his family out on a boat, and they went cruising, I don't know, the Gulf or the Caribbean or something for a whole month. And I asked him, I said, "So what happened to your business while you were gone?" He said, "Not a damn thing." And he said it rocked along. We won 3 new contracts, that they were waiting for me to sign when I got back. And that was fine. It was no delay. It was just part of the process. And he said, "Yeah, we didn't skip a beat." And it's because he has worked hard developing a team.
That's right.
He's got a culture that is proactive and positive. Everybody's on board with it. He's got a reputation in the market for what he does and how he does it, and it continues to thrive. So he has a saleable business.
That's right. And that's the difference. I try to look at everything like from an entrepreneur perspective. Are you spending more time on it or in it? Are you working more on it or in it? And, our goal as an entrepreneur, if we want to grow a business, should be to be working on it. We can't grow it and work for it at the same time, typically, not to scale. I took my first 30-day vacation about 10 years ago. And that was a big light bulb moment for me too. That was right after that mentor said what he said to me. And I really started putting life in the way first. I found that when you've got 15 hours a day to make decisions, you can take 15 hours a day to make decisions. When you've got 3 hours a day to make decisions, you figure out how to make them. And like your drive isn't any different. You just have to make different decisions, right? It's kind of like the day before you go on vacation, how you get infinitely more done than you did the last 3 weeks prior. It's kind of that same mindset of we still have our goal to get to the same place, but I have to make decisions in a different way if I'm not going to be there from sun up to sundown.
Amen. I love it. Well, Jason, this has been great. I think we're about up on time. Tell folks the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more.
So first thing that I want to say is I've studied businesses and my own businesses and business owners for the last 20 years. 90% of new businesses fail within the first 5 years. And I've started to see patterns in that. And I created a whole 16-week training on how to kind of rewire that whole thing from a business owner perspective. But I consolidated it into about 3 hours and made it as a giveaway to your audience. Completely free, no charge. You can go to ultimatesuccessblueprint.com. You have to type in the coupon code Doug. And it'll zero out the balance and make it for free. It'll change the whole way you're looking at your business and the whole way you're looking at life. And I think it'll have a huge impact. So I wanted to give that as a gift. And if you choose to follow me, you can find me Coach Jason Roberts on Facebook, Coach Jason Roberts on Instagram. Thanks for having me, Doug. This was awesome. Good time.
I appreciate it. And folks, as always, we're going to have those links down in the show notes. And Jason, thank you for offering that up. Really appreciate you doing that. We will definitely spread the word on that and get it out. But again, the main thing is that link will be in our show notes here. If you are out mobile somewhere and don't have your notepad with you, just come back, look up the show. It'll be in those notes. But again, one last time, Jason, thanks for sitting in and sharing this with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Good talk.
Well, folks, we are going to wrap it up, and I do like to remind you, we've got a video version of this over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Hop over there, check out the archives, give us a comment, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. We're big boys here. We can deal with it if you got an idea, but give us a recommendation too on other topics or potential guests that you'd like to see on this show. And with that, we're going to sign off, say goodbye. Go out there, make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.